The key is to only be around people who motivate you to do your best. It can be hard to spot fake links, just like it's hard to tell the difference between an image and an island in the huge desert of human touch. Not only instincts, but also a sharp eye are needed to figure out who really cares about us. In a world full of met and mismatched people who wear masks of friendliness and self-interest very well, it takes both to figure out who really cares about us. There are instances when we end up placing an excessive amount of faith in the kindness and goodwill of other people, but in reality, what is taking place is that we are all being exploited. In the same way as an expert gardener is able to differentiate between plants that provide nourishment and those that draw resources from the earth, we also need to acquire the ability to recognize those individuals in our life who are genuine pals. In addition to this, we must acknowledge those individuals who are emotional parasites. As a result, we will now discuss the subtle indicators and patterns that are less evident, which disclose the underlying intents that lie beneath the fake grins and hollow promises. In this content, we will discuss the wisdom of decoding these human enigmas, revealing the route to more real and satisfying relationships. If you are here, it is because you are interested in personal growth, and in this content, we will speak about the wisdom of solving these human mysteries. The failure to fulfill commitments is the 15th point. It is possible to draw parallels between the process of making and breaking promises and a theatrical performance, in which the words are the players and the actions are the script that has been forgotten. These people have perfected the art of verbal persuasion, being able to construct vivid visions of dedication and support throughout their conversations. Nevertheless, their words often lack the substance of action that they want to do. When the time comes to put these painted fantasies into reality, they stumble, exposing the emptiness of their guarantees. They generate expectations with the flourish of a painter, but when the time comes to turn these dreams into reality, they falter. A pattern begins to form in these kinds of interactions. When their assistance is needed the most, when their promise is about to be fulfilled, these folks often disappear, leaving behind a gap that is filled with sadness and despair when they are no longer there. Not only does their absence during times of need constitute a violation of trust, but it also serves as a clear indication of the genuine intentions on their part. The promises that they make are instruments of manipulation with the purpose of obtaining value, trust, or support without any intention of providing anything in return. Because of this, the failure to deliver commitments becomes a kind of litmus test. People who see relationships as solely channels for personal benefit are differentiated from others who view relationships as a two-way street of mutual respect and support. This distinction clarifies the difference between the two groups. Those who are left in the lurch often learn a painful but useful lesson as a result of the experience. Not all promises are constructed on the basis of honesty and integrity. Therefore, the inability to fulfill commitments is an important habit to notice in order to comprehend and recognize those who may strive to take advantage of other people. It is a conduct that reveals another person's genuine character and purpose, and it speaks louder than the most eloquent words that one could ever say. When one is able to recognize this pattern, they are able to acquire the ability to traverse the intricate terrain of human relationships with a more discriminating eye, ultimately protecting their trust and emotional investment. At number 14, statements that are demeaning or condescending. The use of tiny comments as a tool for erosion is a skill that is mastered by those who routinely utilize other people as stepping stones for their own personal benefit, undermining their target's sense of self-worth, self-esteem, and confidence in themselves and their abilities. These remarks, which are frequently disguised as humorous or casual conversation, are, in reality, barbed hooks that are intended to pull down rather than to elevate up. It is possible that they may minimize your achievements, make fun of your goals, or give the impression that they are uninterested in and insensitive to your hardships and obstacles. This kind of action is comparable to a covert kind of psychological warfare. These people create an imbalance in the relationship by consistently undervaluing your accomplishments and goals, which in turn causes the partnership to lose its equilibrium. The purpose of this strategic maneuver is to guarantee that you continue to be in a state of self-doubt and low self-esteem, hence increasing your susceptibility to being manipulated and controlled. According to their perception, your lowered sense of self-worth boosts their standing, so establishing their position of power within the partnership. Moreover, such condescending statements are often a mirror of the fears and feelings of inadequacy that the speaker is experiencing themselves. By putting down other people, they are attempting to conceal their own frailties and give the impression that they are more capable than other people. This conduct is a clear indication that they are unable to participate in relationships that are healthy, helpful, and one that is mutually beneficial. The importance of recognizing and comprehending this pattern of conduct cannot be overstated. It gives you the ability to see past the false charm that these kinds of people often wear and to comprehend the harmful dynamics that lie underneath the surface of the partnership. This should act as a warning to either confront the person directly about their conduct and establish clear limits, or to remove oneself from an atmosphere that is so poisonous. Unilateral advantage is the 13th point. There are many other aspects of a relationship that might be affected by this, including the financial, emotional, and practical aspects. When it comes to money, the user may regularly borrow money or resources with the promise of eventual payback or reciprocity, but these promises are seldom fulfilled. On an emotional level, they may rely greatly on the other for support, affirmation, and attention, but when the roles are switched, they may provide very little to nothing in return. For all intents and purposes, they could routinely ask for favors, assistance, or time, yet when their counterpart needs aid, they might be noticeably missing or too busy to provide it. This unbalanced connection is analogous to a parasitic relationship that exists in nature, in which one creature gains at the cost of another organism. Similar to a parasite, the user receives sustenance, which in this instance may take the form of emotional, financial, or practical assistance, without making a contribution that is equivalent to or appropriate to the growth and development of their host. This lack of reciprocity may, over time, have the effect of depleting the resources of the provider, whether those resources are emotional, financial, or temporal, leaving them feeling tired and disappointed. The reasons underlying unilateral advantage are often founded in a profound lack of empathy and a level of self-centeredness that is deeply ingrained. When it comes to relationships, the user has a transactional perspective, meaning that they evaluate connections primarily on what they stand to receive rather than what they can offer to the relationship. This method of approaching relationships is inherently wrong because it undervalues the intrinsic significance of mutual respect, support, and give and take between the parties involved. An eye that is discerning is required in order to recognize this pattern. Recognizing the ongoing lack of reciprocity and the sensation of being continually shortchanged in the relationship are both necessary steps in this process. An honest evaluation is required to determine if the encounters leave you feeling appreciated and respected, or whether they leave you feeling exploited and devalued. Do not take into consideration your own sentiments or requirements. Observing this pattern of conduct, in which one's emotional landscape is constantly disregarded or undervalued, is like to caring to a garden in which just one flower is allowed to thrive while the others are neglected. During these kinds of encounters, the user's wants and requirements are given priority, while your own are either ignored or pushed to the background. The acts and words of the other person become the scissors that cut away at your emotional well-being, leaving you with a sense of being devalued and invisible within the context of the relationship. It is possible for this disdain to take many different shapes. The fact that they frequently ignore your emotional needs and fail to give support or understanding at times when you are vulnerable or in need may be an indication that they are not interested in meeting those needs. Their indifference to your thoughts and choices, in which your voice is drowned out by their dominant narrative, is one way in which this lack of interest may be seen. There is a possibility that they may fail to appreciate your accomplishments, or even worse, they will belittle your hardships, making light of the problems that you are struggling with. This kind of conduct is not only insensitive, rather, it is a deliberate disregard, a tactic that is employed to keep an upper hand in the relationship by negating your emotions and needs. A setting is created by the user in which your sense of self-worth is diminished, which in turn makes you more sensitive to the user's ability to exert influence and control over you. Emotional manipulation is a sort of manipulation that is carried out in a subtle manner, yet has a major influence. As a result of the fact that it strikes at the very heart of one's emotional well-being, this dynamic is considered to be extremely harmful. Fundamentally important is the need to be heard, understood, and respected. When these requirements are disregarded on a consistent basis, it may result in a decrease in self-esteem and a sense of loneliness, even if you are in a relationship that seems to be active. It is necessary to be able to spot the indicators of emotional neglect in order to successfully navigate such seas. With this understanding, you will be able to steer clear of relationships that put your mental health in jeopardy and instead seek out healthier ones. It gives you the ability to seek out interactions in which reciprocity, respect, and mutual care are the underlying pillars between the parties involved. Manipulation of emotions is the 11th point. It often begins in a sneaky manner, with the manipulator portraying themselves as concerned and sensitive to the situations. The facade, on the other hand, soon transforms into a system that allows them to induce emotions of worry, inadequacy, or guilt in the person they are targeting. They become skilled at manipulating your emotions, praising you to raise you when it serves their goal, and then brutally criticizing or disparaging you in order to build feelings of reliance and self-doubt in you. Take into consideration the comparison between a gardener and a beautiful plant. A compassionate gardener tends to their plants by ensuring that they get the ideal quantity of sunshine and water. The emotional manipulator, on the other hand, is similar to a careless gardener in that they fluctuate between overwatering the plant and allowing it to wither away in circumstances of drought. They use severe emotional states in order to destabilize the target, so creating an atmosphere in which the target becomes emotionally reliant on the manipulator and is continuously looking for the approval and validation of the manipulator in order to recapture that original affection. Many times, the very center of an individual's emotional well-being is the focus of this manipulation. To maintain a condition of self-doubt that is constant, they may minimize the significance of your achievements or exaggerate the magnitude of your shortcomings. They may manipulate circumstances in order to make you feel guilty for your usual behavior, shifting the blame in order to guarantee that you are the one who is always the one to apologize. The power dynamic in relationships that include emotional manipulation is always unbalanced because of the nature of the connection. To maintain their target's sense of equilibrium, the manipulator is in charge of making decisions on whether to show love and when to withdraw from the situation. On the contrary, this dynamic is not about mutual development or support. Rather, It is about satisfying the wants of the manipulator at the cost of the emotional well-being of the other person. Having a deep knowledge of these dynamics is necessary in order to recognize emotional manipulation successfully. Recognizing the patterns of engagement in which one's sentiments are repeatedly played with is a necessary step throughout this process. This necessitates introspection in order to comprehend the manner in which these encounters influence an individual's sense of self and emotional well-being. The lack of true help is the 10th issue. Imagine a tree in the middle of a big forest. Ideally, it is supported by the trees and undergrowth that are located in its immediate vicinity, where it receives nutrients, shelter, and the company of an environment that is flourishing. Consider the following scenario. A tree is the only plant in a desolate area, and there is no other vegetation to provide it with support or protection. To be in this situation is analogous to being in a relationship with someone who does not really care about your health and happiness. You are standing by yourself without any assistance. There is no sense of fellowship among your branches, yet they seek out for it. In these kinds of partnerships, your objectives, initiatives, and difficulties are addressed with disinterest or with gestures of support that are only symbolic. In spite of the fact that this someone may not be enthusiastic about your intentions, may not give a half-hearted good luck, or may not even verbally express support, their actions or lack thereof speak louder when it comes to providing practical aid, valuable advice, or even just an ear to listen during difficult times. Not only is their presence visibly lacking, but their assistance, if it is supplied at all, is often shallow, more a matter of form than substance, and frequently disappears when it is needed the most. The fact that they are so focused on doing what is best for themselves is the primary cause of this lack of true support. Your achievements or failures, the difficulties you face, or a sole focus in serving are only of interest to Sewer because of the impact they have on them or their pursuit of their purpose. They have a transactional perspective on relationships in which the emotional commitment they make is evaluated depending on the prospective personal benefits they may get. One side consistently provides, whether it be work, attention, or resources, while the other party takes, which often leaves the giver feeling devalued and unrecognized. This mindset produces an imbalance that affects the relationship between the two parties. Understanding the nature of your connection with such a person requires that you first acknowledge the absence of true assistance that you have received from them. It is necessary to do an honest evaluation of the reciprocity that exists in your connections. In order to ensure that you engage your time and energy in relationships that are caring, reciprocal, and really helpful, it is essential that you recognize and address the lack of support that you are experiencing. In the 9th place, there is always competition. Imagine playing a game of chess in which every move is carefully considered, not just to progress one's position, but also to methodically degrade the opponent that is playing against you. To continue along this line, a person who is just interested in using you will often approach your relationship as if it were a game of strategy. Everything you do, every choice you make, and even every difficulty you face becomes a chance for them to demonstrate their supremacy. Their activities, whether they include overshadowing your professional triumphs, outdoing your personal accomplishments, or discreetly undermining your choices, are motivated by the urge to maintain a competitive advantage in this rivalry that they have placed on themselves. The ongoing rivalry presents itself in a variety of different ways. At the context of a working environment, they can try to outshine you at meetings or take credit for the ideas that you have contributed. When it comes to personal interactions, they may minimize your experiences or accomplishments, often contrasting them with their own in order to make themselves look more relevant. Even when they are having casual discussions, There is a discernible undertone of them, attempting to demonstrate that they are superior, more intelligent, or more accomplished than others. The origin of this conduct may be traced back to a profound sense of insecurity and an erroneous comprehension of one's own worth, in which the individual's value is not determined by their own merit, but rather by their superiority over others. Under this point of view, every contact is transformed into a zero-sum game in which, in order for them to emerge victorious, another individual, namely you, must suffer defeat. It is a mentality in which the drive to outdo and outshine others takes precedence over the progress of both parties involved. Participating in a relationship with someone who displays a persistent sense of rivalry may be emotionally draining. A perpetually tense atmosphere is produced as a result, one in which true cooperation or support is substituted by competition. Your triumphs are not lauded, but rather regarded as threats to their supremacy, and your tribulations are not received with compassion, but rather seen as chances for them to gain an advantage over you. Recognition and comprehension of this pattern are of the utmost importance. It assists in establishing limits and, if at all feasible, recalibrating the connection to bring about a dynamic that is more conducive to collaboration and wellness. It entails acknowledging that the cornerstone of any relationship that is healthy is not a never-ending competition for supremacy, but rather mutual respect and support for one another. Lack of presence at crucial periods is the eighth issue. This pattern of activity is reminiscent of a tree that only gives shade while the sun is not too strong, but suddenly disappears as storm clouds begin to form. When things are going well, when everything is going smoothly, they are there, basking in the light that they get from each other and maybe receiving the advantages of the connection. On the other hand, when the tides shift, when difficulties emerge, and when assistance is most required, their presence diminishes, leaving you to weather the storm on your own. Individuals who behave in this manner see relationships as a convenience, a means to an end, in which their engagement is evaluated based on the degree to which it will benefit them personally. The assistance that they provide is merely cosmetic, and it is only extended when it is in accordance with their interests or when there is something to gain. It is easy to feel their absence at times of stress, whether it be a personal crisis, a professional loss, or the upheaval they are experiencing. It is precisely at these moments, when real support and empathy are needed the most, that their actual priorities and lack of commitment to the partnership are brought into glaring relief. It is possible that this action will have a significant influence on the one who is disappointed. As a result, it gives rise to feelings of betrayal and disappointment, eroding the trust and dependability that one believed to be the cornerstones of the partnership. As a result, it prompts a re-evaluation of the individual's place and significance in one's life, as well as issues about the basic nature of the connection between the two parties. It is necessary to have an understanding of this pattern in order to recognize the nature of the connection as well as the genuine intents of the other particular individual. In order to do so, it is necessary to acknowledge that the foundation of every meaningful relationship is the provision of regular support, both during times of happiness and during times of difficulty. Having the awareness that someone is missing at your most crucial times acts as a crucial litmus test, assisting in the differentiation between those who are actually concerned in your well-being and those who are in the relationship just for their own benefit. Seventh, there is a lack of reciprocity present. Consider a seesaw in which one side is weighed down by the burden of the efforts, sacrifices, and promises that have been made, while the other side is light as a feather and does not contain any contributions that are similar. This picture is a perfect illustration of a relationship that does not include reciprocity. Whenever you are involved in such relationships, you discover that you are always spending your time, energy, and emotions in an effort to cultivate and maintain the connection. In contrast, the contributions made by the other individual are either insignificant, often insignificant, or completely missing. This difference in effort might present itself in a number of different ways. In spite of the fact that their reactions are lukewarm or non-committal, it is possible that you are the one who constantly initiates conversation and makes arrangements. One possible explanation is that you are able to provide consistent support and understanding, but you do not get the same amount of empathy or aid when you need it. It is possible that you may find yourself open and forthright even when you are discussing personal experiences and weaknesses, while others may stay guarded or uninterested in the conversation. The causes for this lack of reciprocity stem from a self-centered orientation to relationships, which is the fundamental cause of the condition. The relationship is a convenience for the user, a resource that can be used whenever it is required, and there is no intention of a meaningful exchange taking place between the two parties. Their participation is calculated and reliant on what is beneficial to them, and they do not take into account the requirements and perspectives of the other individual. This strategy runs counter to the fundamental principles that underpin good relationships, which are characterized by a reciprocal exchange of benefits, the exchange of experiences, and a balanced investment of emotional work. In order to recognize the absence of reciprocity, it is necessary to examine the dynamics of the relationship with complete awareness. It entails inquiring as to whether the efforts to maintain and expand the connection are shared by both parties, or if you are responsible for a disproportionate amount of them. In order to determine if the connection is felt to be nourishing or draining, equal or slanted, it is necessary to conduct an honest appraisal. Speculation and betrayal of trust come in at number 6. One may say that this is similar to a sword with two edges. On the one hand, the act of spreading rumors about other people might provide the impression of trust and camaraderie when it is not true. Some people may give the impression that they are confiding in you, therefore luring you into a circle of trust that seems to be exclusive. On the other hand, the opposite side of the blade is far more foreboding. It entails the betrayal of your trust, in which the private or sensitive information that you entrusted with them in confidence becomes fuel for them to talk about with other people. This act of betrayal is not just a breach of trust. Rather, it is a calculated attack designed to undermine your feeling of safety and privacy within the context of the relationship. The behavior in question demonstrates a deliberate contempt for the integrity of personal information, as well as an obvious disregard for the bounds of secrecy. Utilizing gossip as a weapon for social maneuvering, the user often positions themselves as a center of information in order to achieve their goals. They strive to manipulate views, forge alliances, or even sow strife for their own profit by spreading and manipulating information in order to achieve their goals. It is clear that this conduct exemplifies a utilitarian attitude to relationships, in which individuals are seen as means to a goal, and sensitive information is regarded as cash that may be exchanged. The victim is subject to a variety of consequences as a result of such conduct. As a result, it creates an atmosphere of distrust and insecurity, which undermines the fundamental basis of a relationship that had the potential to be helpful and trustworthy. Due to the fact that the abuse of personal information may cause harm to reputations, relationships, and self-esteem, it can lead to social and emotional ramifications. Recognizing this pattern of conduct is very necessary in order to protect oneself from relationship predators like these. This requires them to be watchful about how they talk about other people when they are not there, and to exercise caution with regard to the information that they share with them. It is possible to get useful insights about a person's character and intentions by observing their tendency to indulge in gossip and their regard for secrecy. When it comes to preserving one's dignity and making certain that personal boundaries are maintained in all interactions, it is essential to recognize and address this tendency. The fifth point is availability that is selected. Instead of being available, you are available. When seen in this light, selective availability gives the impression of a relationship that is completely unbalanced. In the same sense that just one side is constantly on call, it is comparable to a phone line. Within the context of this dynamic, you are always prepared to give an ear, extend a hand, or provide assistance to those who need it. Both your calendar and your emotions, as well as your resources, are open books that are easily available to their readers. The availability of the other person, on the other hand, is as seldom as a comet in the night sky. It is sporadic, unexpected, and always on their terms. On the contrary, this disparity in availability is not only the result of hectic schedules or competing priorities. Rather, it is the result of a conscious decision made by the user, a strategic attitude that they have selected. Their inaccessibility serves two purposes. First, it allows them to keep a comfortable distance from the situation, and second, it puts them in a position of management. By restricting their availability, they create a dynamic in which you are left wanting more, and you often feel thankful for any time or attention they choose to provide you. Your attempts to connect or interact with the other person in such situations are typically greeted with excuses, delays, or outright neglecting of your efforts. It's possible that your calls and messages may go unanswered and that your requirements will go ignored. Whenever they do participate, it is often in accordance with their requirements or agenda, which transforms the relationship into a one-way street in which your function is reduced to that of a convenience rather than that of a partnership that is respected. It's possible that this habit may take a big emotional toll on you. As you start to doubt the value of your contributions and your worth in the eyes of the other person, it gives rise to feelings of inadequacy in you. The understanding that your efforts and availability are not reciprocated gives rise to an undercurrent of dissatisfaction and resentment, which is something that is created as a result of this. It is essential to have a good understanding of the pattern of selective availability. It requires taking a step back and doing an impartial evaluation of the harmony between the amount of effort and availability in the relationship. Having this knowledge is necessary because strong relationships are built on the foundation of mutual respect, effort, and presence. The fourth reason is that it makes you feel guilty. Imagine a situation in which shame acts such that it is similar to the thread that a puppeteer pulls, pulling at the conscience of the kind-hearted and directing them down a route that they would not have chosen voluntarily. The person who is exploiting you is skilled at pulling these threads, which allows them to appeal to your feeling of duty, empathy, or justice at the same time. They can phrase their demands in such a manner that denial would give the impression that you are indifferent or self-centered. On the other hand, they may bring to mind previous favors or situations, implying that there is an unwritten obligation that you are now expected to return. When it comes to generating guilt, this strategy is often covert and sneaky. It begins with very little favors or concessions. Then, over the course of time, it steadily escalates to include increasingly major demands. Your ability to reject is diminished, and your boundaries are destroyed, leaving you with the impression that you are imprisoned in a cycle of guilt and submission. In this situation, the demands and desires of the other person take precedence, while your own are either marginalized or completely disregarded. The capacity of this strategy to appeal to a basic component of human nature, namely the need to be seen as being kind, helpful, and caring, is the reason why it is so successful. These attributes are distorted by the user, who turns them into levers of control by making you feel guilty about being a good person. Rather of acting out of true desire or mutual respect, you discover that you are doing out of a sense of forced responsibility, and as a result, you frequently experience feelings of resentment or exhaustion. If you want to keep the integrity of your personal boundaries and you want to retain your emotional well-being, it is essential that you be able to recognize when someone is using guilt to manipulate you. Having this awareness requires you to be aware of the emotional undercurrents that are present in your contacts and to differentiate between genuine pleas for assistance and efforts to take advantage of your kindness. In addition to this, it is necessary to have the bravery to examine the reasons responsible for the demands and to exercise your right to decline without feeling bad about it. In order to cultivate healthy relationships that are founded on mutual respect, real caring, and free choice, rather than responsibility and guilt, it is vital to recognize and confront this manipulative strategy. Lack of personal involvement coming in at number 3. Imagine that a discussion is a roadway that goes in both directions, like a busy street that is filled with the flow of ideas, experiences, and feelings that are going back and forth. When two people are in a good relationship, this street is bustling with the interchange of care and interest between them. On the other hand, when you are dealing with someone who is just interested in using you, this roadway begins to function as a one-way lane. Attempts to push the topic towards your life are often met with diversions or dead ends, while their tales and experiences are the driving force behind the talk. Several different manifestations of this lack of personal interest might be found. Conversations with people like that often have the sensation of being monologues disguised as conversations. They gladly go into the nitty-gritty details of their day-to-day life, including the difficulties and victories they face, in the hopes of gaining your attention and sympathies. On the other hand, their curiosity begins to diminish when the focus is directed towards you. They could answer with cursory nods, quickly shift the topic, or exhibit evident indifference or frustration. All of these responses are possible. Your issues and experiences, regardless of how big they may be, seem to barely register on their radar, indicating that they are concerned. Not only does this conduct demonstrate a lack of social decorum or an inability to engage in conversation, but it also serves as a purposeful signal of the priorities and objectives of the individual in question. By taking control of the discussion and ignoring your tales, they create a dynamic in which their requirements, ideas, and lives take priority over yours. On the other hand, it is a subtle sort of egocentrism in which the relationship revolves around their axis, and your position is limited to that of an audience or a sounding board. These kinds of encounters may have a profoundly demoralizing effect on anybody involved. Due to the fact that the underlying human desire for recognition and understanding is not being satisfied, it might result in feelings of insignificance and dissatisfaction. This imbalance might ultimately cause the basis of the relationship to deteriorate over time, leaving you with the impression that you are more of an accessory to their life than an equal partner. Realizing that there is a lack of personal interest is really important. It entails being conscious of the dynamics of your relationships and being conscious of the emotional effect that these talks that are one-sided have on you. An assessment is required to determine if the connection is mutually rewarding or exhausting for both parties involved. Identifying this imbalance prepares the way for the pursuit of relationships that are more mutually beneficial and satisfying, in which your experiences and stories are appreciated and respected in the same manner that they are loved and respected by others. The second criterion is superficial proximity. A comparison may be made between it to the shimmering surface of a lake. It gives the impression of depth and substance, but upon closer study, one discovers that it does not possess the profundity that it claims to have. The individuals may imitate the acts of a close friend or a devoted partner while they are interacting with one another in this manner. It is possible that they communicate with one another often, that they laugh together, and that they even take part in talks that seem to be personal. This appearance of proximity, on the other hand, never goes beyond the realm of genuine depth. Several other manifestations of this lack of true dedication might be seen. It is possible that you will observe that although they are fast to take pleasure in the advantages of the connection, they are also quick to separate themselves when it needs them to exert effort or make sacrifices regarding the partnership. Whenever there is a crisis, their assistance is often insufficient or non-existent. It is possible that they are there at times of happiness and celebration, but they must be notably missing during times of difficulty or vulnerability. Furthermore, this apparent closeness often neglects to include the essential components of trust and dependability that are the foundation of genuine partnerships. Plans may be formed, but they might be broken in a casual manner, and pledges might be made, but they are seldom maintained. Their engagement in the relationship is often on their own terms, with convenience and self-interest serving as the primary motivating factors. It is common for people to engage in this activity in order to keep a network of connections that can be accessed whenever it is required, without having to put in the emotional effort that is necessary for genuine relationships. It's a tactic that involves keeping individuals near enough to one another for practical purposes, but not close enough to need a commitment from both parties. It is a type of emotional hedging in the sense that it allows one to gain the pleasures of proximity without the danger of developing a genuine connection or taking on responsibility. In order to have a complete grasp of the dynamics that are at play in a relationship, it is essential to recognize superficial closeness. Involved in this process is the observation of patterns of interaction and the questioning of whether or not the apparent closeness is matched by deeds of true commitment and shared vulnerability. In order to determine if the connection is balanced in terms of emotional involvement or whether it is slanted towards fulfilling their wants, careful consideration is required. It is a relationship that is defined by a veneer of closeness, but it does not have the base of true commitment and individual and collective development. It is possible to seek out and cultivate relationships that are founded on sincerity, reciprocity, and genuine emotional depth if one is able to recognize this pattern. In the first place, there is an ongoing lack of respect. This is not only a loss in judgment or a slip of the tongue that occurs in the heat of the moment. Rather, it is a constant thread that is woven into the fabric of the connection. Various manifestations of it may be found. The way in which this occurs might be via statements that are demeaning, attitudes that are dismissive, or even a blatant disdain for your emotions and limits. This conduct might be covert, like a succession of little cuts, or it can be overt, like a serious blow to your dignity that is glaringly obvious. Imagine a garden in which respect serves as the food that brings about the flourishing of romantic relationships. The lack of it results in a landscape that is devoid of any vegetation that is capable of having a healthy growth. As a result of this circumstance, each effort to engage in conversation or make a connection becomes a route that is littered with thorns of scorn and disrespect. This lack of respect is used as a tactic, whether intentionally or subconsciously, by the one who is displaying it in order to exert dominance or control in the relationship. It is a method of reducing the other, which allows one to keep an upper hand in a dynamic that ought to be characterized by equality and mutual esteem. This continuous disrespect is a significant factor that destroys the basis of the partnership. When differences of opinion arise, rather than being resolved through the application of understanding and empathy, they are transformed into battlegrounds with little concern for the emotional casualties that may result. there is a disruption in the natural ebb and flow of relationship dynamics, which makes it difficult, if not impossible, to return to a level of normality and mutual respect. The importance of understanding and acknowledging this pattern of repeated disrespect cannot be overstated. It requires going beyond individual episodes to see the larger pattern of conduct that has been occurring. It is about coming to terms with the fact that respect is not limited to great gestures. Rather, it is present in the everyday interactions, the tiny acknowledgements, and the manner in which conflicts are resolved between individuals. To summarize, a continuous lack of respect in a relationship is a strong symptom of a person who regards you not as an equal partner, but rather as a means to an end. This is because the person views you as a means to an end. A relationship that is essentially imbalanced and dysfunctional is something that is shown by the fact that there is no respect for your emotions and dignity. It is essential for everyone who places a high value on their own self-respect and who is looking for partnerships that are founded on a basis of mutual respect and equality to recognize this characteristic.